Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into something today that's really shaking things up in the job market, and that's artificial intelligence.
AI.
AI, exactly.
Okay.
And, we always talk about how AI is going to take over jobs and stuff.
Right, the robots are coming for us.
Exactly. But that's not really what we're talking about today. We're kind of going a little deeper, right? We're going to look at how AI is changing how we even get those jobs in the first place, like how we apply and how we interview.
Yeah, it's like AI is already in the game even before you get the job.
Exactly. And, to help us kind of unpack all of this, we've got some really interesting articles here. One is all about how people are using AI to, basically get an edge in their interviews.
Oh, interesting.
And then the other one looks at how companies are reacting to this, and even giants like Amazon.
Oh, I bet they love AI, right? They're using it for everything.
Well, that's the thing. They're trying to figure out how to deal with people using it to get a leg up in interviews. So it's kind of
It's a tricky situation.
It is. It is. Like, where do we draw the line? I mean, imagine prepping for this big interview, but instead of, practicing your answers, you're downloading an app that basically feeds you the perfect response.
Whoa, hold on.
In real time.
Is that allowed?
Right. Is that genius or is that cheating? That's kind of the question we're going to be.
Yeah, what even is authentic anymore? If a machine is giving you the answer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's, unpack all of this. First, let's talk about what even are these tools? What are these AI interview tools? We're seeing all kinds of stuff out there, from resume builders to these apps that are like magic teleprompters during the interview.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So think Final Round AI, Copilot. There are even some with names like Tech and Cheat and Ikut.
Okay, so I guess it makes sense, right? The job market is just so competitive these days, especially in tech. Everyone's trying to get that edge, so.
Exactly. So, is it really cheating, though?
Yeah.
I mean, the CEO of one of these companies, Final Round AI, Michael Kwan, he argues that it's just being resourceful.
Resourceful? How so?
He compares it to, using a calculator in school.
Ah, okay.
So, what do you think? Is using AI in an interview really that different from using a calculator on a math test?
I see what he's saying. The calculator's not doing the thinking for you. You still have to understand the math.
Right.
But it just helps you with the mechanics, right? The calculation. So maybe these AI tools, it's kind of like that. They're helping people articulate their thoughts better, especially if they're, nervous or they get anxious in interviews.
Right. So it's almost like having a virtual coach, helping you present the best version of yourself.
Exactly.
And then does that become, is that a new skill then? AI fluency?
Oh, that's an interesting idea. Being able to use AI effectively, that could be a really valuable skill in the workplace, especially as this technology becomes more and more, prevalent.
Right, because it's not going away.
It's not going anywhere. But, there's another side to this.
Of course, yeah.
There are concerns, definitely.
Definitely. Because on the flip side, you have these recruiters and these companies who are like, wait a minute, is this person really representing their actual abilities? If someone nails an interview because of AI, can they actually do the job?
Right. Can they back it up?
Exactly. And it's not just a theoretical concern. The article actually mentions that Amazon,
Of course.
yeah. They're, heavily invested in AI, but they're actually developing guidelines to detect AI use in their own interviews.
Oh, wow. That's kind of ironic.
It is a little bit ironic, right?
They love AI, but they don't want people using it against them.
Right. Exactly. So, it really kind of highlights this, complex relationship we have with this technology.
Absolutely. We see the potential, it's exciting, but there are definitely these downsides, these risks that we have to be aware of.
Especially when we're talking about judging people, and their capabilities.
Yeah, exactly. And it gets even more complicated, believe it or not.
Oh no, what's next?
There's this whole other thing, right? The rise of these, what they're calling proxy interview services.
Proxy interview, what is that?
Okay, so basically these are, think of it like paid helpers.
Okay.
Who are secretly assisting candidates during interviews.
Oh, so they're in the background.
Yeah, in the background, feeding them answers, helping them out.
Oh, wow.
And this has been around, but it's gotten even more, I guess, sophisticated with AI.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So they're using tools like otter.ai, which is actually designed for transcription, but they're repurposing it to feed answers to candidates in real time.
Hold on.
Yeah.
So it's like having a ghostwriter for your interview.
Pretty much. And the article even mentions this one candidate who was looking for an Otter-type proxy specifically for an AWS DevOps interview, which is like a really technical role.
So they're not even like trying to hide it. They're just openly looking for these services.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of out in the open, which is kind of crazy. And it really, it blurs the lines even more, right, between assistance and deception. Like, at what point are we just, completely faking it?
Yeah, and then how can you make an informed decision as the company?
Right, exactly. If you don't even know who you're really talking to.
So where do we go from here? Like, are AI job interviews just going to become like the norm?
It's hard to say, right? It's changing so rapidly, but some people are actually arguing that AI could make the process better.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like Aidan Kramer, he's the CEO of A-Apply. He thinks that AI can help candidates relax, perform better, and ultimately, lead to a more accurate assessment of their abilities.
So it's not all doom and gloom?
Not necessarily. I mean, there's definitely potential there.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. So maybe instead of fearing AI, we should be thinking about how to use it to make interviews more effective and maybe even fairer.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what if we could use AI to personalize interview questions, based on each candidate's background? Or maybe even, like, reduce bias in the evaluation process.
Oh, that's a really cool idea. Yeah.
Yeah, like, the future of interviewing could be this really cool partnership between AI and humans, right? Where they're working together to find the perfect fit for both the company and the candidate.
Okay, so we've talked about AI helping the candidate answer questions. But what about companies using AI to analyze those answers?
Oh, yeah. That's a whole other layer. There are all sorts of platforms out there that use AI to analyze facial expressions, tone of voice, even these tiny little movements they call micro movements to assess personality traits and if someone's right for a role.
Hold on. Micro movements.
Oh.
That sounds a little, I don't know, a little creepy, right? Like Big Brother's watching.
Yeah, it definitely raises some questions about privacy and, potential for bias, like how accurate are these AI assessments really? And could they actually end up perpetuating inequalities instead of, eliminating them? That's something we really need to consider, especially as this technology gets, more and more advanced.
It's a lot to think about, isn't it? Because, I mean, on one hand, it could be amazing, right? Like uncovering hidden talent, making hiring more objective.
Right.
But then on the other hand, we have to be careful about relying too much on these algorithms, right? What about the potential for, unintended consequences?
Absolutely. We can't just blindly trust these systems. Critical thinking, ethical considerations, those are absolutely crucial here. Like, what kind of hiring process do we actually want? One that values fairness, transparency, human connection, or one that just reduces people to, data points and algorithms?
So we've covered a lot, right? AI-powered teleprompters, these proxy interview services, even AI analysis of candidate behavior. It's clear that the world of job interviews is changing, like, really fast.
And there are no easy answers, that's for sure. It's a brand new world, uncharted territory, and the ethical implications are huge.
So what does this all mean for the future of job interviews? Will AI just become like a standard part of the process for both companies and candidates? And if so, how do we make sure it's fair and transparent for everyone?
Those are the questions we need to keep asking ourselves, and the answers are going to shape the future of work itself.
This deep dive has been like seriously eye-opening, and I feel like we've only just, scratched the surface here. What do you think?
Totally agree. It's a conversation that's just getting started for sure.
It's amazing to think about how quickly all of this is changing. It really does feel like we're living in some kind of sci-fi movie.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating to me is how, this technology, it's kind of blurring the lines between what's natural ability and what's, AI-assisted performance. And that's a question that goes way beyond just job interviews, right?
Absolutely. It makes you wonder, are we all going to need some level of AI fluency just to, keep up? Almost like a new kind of literacy,
That's a really good point. I mean, think about it. Just a few years ago, using AI in a job interview would have sounded crazy. Now it's becoming more and more common. And as these AI tools get even more advanced, easier to use, I mean, it's not hard to imagine a future where it's just expected, everyone's using it.
Okay, but then if we get to that point, right, where using AI is almost like expected, how do we make sure it's fair? Because not everyone has access to the same resources, the same level of, tech savviness.
That's a huge point, right? Equity and access. If being able to use AI effectively becomes like a key to success in the job market, we have to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to develop those skills. So that could mean things like free or affordable training programs, making AI tools more user-friendly, addressing the digital divide that prevents some communities from even getting online.
It also makes you think about, education and training. If AI can help people ace these interviews, do schools and universities need to, change what they're teaching? Should they be focusing more on these AI-assisted skills?
That's something educators are already, starting to wrap their heads around. The traditional models of education, they might need to evolve, right, to prepare students for a world where AI is just everywhere. So that could mean, teaching students how to use these AI tools effectively, how to think critically about the content that AI generates, and how to be creative and adaptable, because those are qualities that AI can't really replicate.
It's almost like we're entering, a new renaissance, but instead of art and literature, it's all about technology and its impact on human potential.
I like that analogy, yeah. It's exciting for sure, but it's also a little bit, makes you think we need to be careful. We need to think ethically as we embrace these possibilities, make sure we're using this technology to create a better future, a fairer future.
Let's bring it back to those specific challenges companies are facing, right? How do they actually detect and prevent people from using AI in these interviews? The article mentioned Amazon creating these guidelines for recruiters. What kind of measures are we talking about?
It's hard to say exactly what Amazon's doing internally, but it probably involves, training recruiters to spot those signs of AI assistance.
Oh, so what would that even look like?
Well, it could be things like, noticing if a candidate's responses are unusually fast or sound kind of robotic.
Okay.
Or if there are inconsistencies in their answers, or if they just, lack that spontaneity that you'd expect in a real conversation.
So it's like a constant game of cat and mouse, right? As the AI tools get more advanced, are companies even going to be able to keep up?
That's the challenge, for sure. Some experts actually believe that instead of trying to fight AI, companies should embrace it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They're arguing that AI could actually make hiring more efficient, more objective, It could automate certain tasks, provide insights from all this data, and maybe even reduce some of that human bias that we know is out there.
But wouldn't that create a situation where, companies are using AI to judge candidates who are also using AI? It sounds like an AI arms race. Everyone's trying to outsmart each other with algorithms.
Yeah, that's definitely a valid concern. We need to be very careful that using AI in hiring doesn't create an uneven playing field or, lead to discrimination. So transparency and accountability are going to be key here. Candidates should know how AI is being used in the process, and companies need to be responsible for making sure their AI systems are fair and unbiased.
And it raises the question of, what skills and qualities are even going to be valuable in the future? If AI can handle a lot of the tasks that humans do now, what's going to set us apart?
That's the big question, right? And there's no easy answer. Some people think that skills like creativity, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, problem solving, those are going to become even more important because those are harder for AI to replicate. Others are saying it's going to be about adaptability, collaboration, being able to work effectively with AI systems.
So it's not just about fighting against AI, it's about figuring out how to work alongside it.
Right. It's going to be this, this evolving relationship between humans and machines. And we need to figure out how to make it work for everyone.
This whole conversation just makes me think of that Arthur C. Clarke quote, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. It really does feel like magic sometimes, right?
It does. It's a time of, incredible potential and also a lot of anxiety. We're in uncharted territory here, exploring these new frontiers. But we need to do it responsibly, make sure this powerful technology benefits humanity, not harms it.
Well said, well said. It's clear that this is just the beginning of a much bigger conversation, right? About AI, about its role in our lives, not just in work, but everywhere.
Absolutely. And it's a conversation we need to have together. Experts, policymakers, the public, everyone needs to be involved. The choices we make now are going to have a huge impact on the future, on future generations.
Yeah. So far we've talked about the rise of these AI tools, the ethical dilemmas, the challenges companies are facing. Where do we go from here? What's next?
Well, I think it's time to shift the focus a bit, you know? We've talked about companies, we've talked about the pressures candidates are facing, but what about their motivations? Why are they turned into these AI tools in the first place? Is it just about, getting ahead, trying to cheat the system, or is there something more to it?
That's a great question. I'm really curious to hear what our sources had to say about that. So let's dive in.
All right, so we're back. And I'm really kind of curious to dig into, why are people using these AI tools? Is it all about just getting ahead, or is there something more to it?
Yeah, it's probably a mix of things, right?
Yeah.
You got to remember the job market is, especially in tech, it's brutal out there.
Yeah.
And candidates are feeling all this pressure, to be perfect, to have all the right answers, to stand out.
Mm-hmm.
So AI tools can kind of offer this sense of security,
Oh.
help overcome anxiety, maybe feel more confident in their abilities.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, interviews are nerve-wracking.
Right.
I've definitely been in those situations where, you just blank on a question, or
Oh, yeah, totally.
you just stumble over your words, when you feel that pressure.
Exactly. And AI can be like that little, safety net, right?
Mm-hmm.
Helping you avoid those awkward moments, make sure you're saying the right thing. Right. It's like having a coach, whispering in your ear.
Exactly.
But then does that, take away from how authentic the candidate is,
Yeah.
If they're relying on AI to answer these questions, how can the interviewer really get to know them and what they bring to the table?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right? Is it still you if an algorithm is giving you the answers?
Right.
I mean, some people would argue it's just a tool,
Right. Yeah.
using a calculator, right? You still have to understand the concepts.
Yeah, but an interview is not just a knowledge test, right?
No, absolutely not. It's about personality, communication skills, how well someone would fit in.
Right.
And AI can't really replicate that, at least not yet.
So it seems like finding that balance is key, right? Using AI to improve yourself, but not losing that human touch.
Totally. And being transparent about it.
Oh, yeah.
Candidates should be upfront about using AI tools. Companies should be clear about how they're using it in their process. Open communication is key. Build that trust.
Okay, yeah. So looking ahead, what does this mean for the future of work? Could AI just eventually replace interviewers altogether?
I mean, it's possible, right? We might see a future where AI is doing those initial screenings, analyzing resumes, maybe even conducting those first-round interviews, virtual interviews.
Wow.
But I still think at the end of the day, that human element is going to be crucial. Making those final hiring decisions, it's about so much more than just data points. It's about experience, personality, cultural fit, all these nuances that AI might not fully grasp.
So maybe it's more about a partnership,
Yeah.
right? AI and humans working together.
Exactly. AI can handle those, routine tasks, analyze all that data, maybe even flag potential bias, but it's still up to those human recruiters to interpret all of that, connect with the candidate, make those well-rounded decisions.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the key takeaway for our listeners? What do you want them to remember?
I think the main thing is, remember, AI is a tool. Like any tool. It can be used for good or bad, right? It's up to us to guide its development, to use it responsibly, and to make sure it benefits everyone, both individuals and society as a whole. When it comes to job interviews, embrace the potential of AI, let it improve the process, but don't lose sight of what's important: authenticity, transparency, that human connection.